Hi, we're here with Kevin O'Connell from PwC, and we're talking about environmental, social, and governance principles within the family firm, or ESG. It's an acronym that has gained some traction over the last 2 years. And families probably have been doing these ESG principles intrinsically within their family for many, many years and may not have been talking about it. So, Kevin, let's start with defining ESG first.
So ESG is environmental, social, and governance, and really was coined by socially responsible investors. And so if you think about the E, those are things like carbon emissions and waste and water management. If you move to the S, those are all the social justice categories. So diversity and inclusion, human capital management, even data security and privacy. And then you move to governance, and that's really around business ethics. So that's a quick definition of ESG.
Yeah, and I can think of many, many families that are in that mid-market, multi-generational size bracket that have probably been doing the S and the G for, as I said, many, many years. But they haven't been sharing or even measuring those goals. What are some metrics that you're seeing emerge around ESG principles?
Yeah, we understand that these family businesses have been making significant impacts in the community for a large number of years. The most prevalent metrics we see people focused on these days are really around climate risk and human capital management. And so if I was to suggest two, those are probably the ones that we would focus on.
Yeah, and then the governance practice. I mean, what kind of elements are you seeing measured there?
Typically, as I mentioned, it was around business ethics or around board governance. So really making sure you're getting true representation on the board or advisors that you have in the company to make sure you're getting a diverse perspective.
Yeah, that diverse perspective plus maybe actual structure and process versus just the kitchen table. Family companies have a bit of an evolution around their governance practices. I would imagine when you start focusing on ESG as a part of your bottom line or a part of your return, that governance becomes, in terms of process and in terms of practice, becomes a spotlighted area.
Absolutely a true statement, and we see many companies are focused on that governance aspect. So if you think about how do you get started from an ESG perspective, it's really talking to your shareholders and your stakeholders. So those could be the customers that you have, the employees that work for you, to really understand what the material issues are that are going to impact your company. So if that's climate risk or human capital, as we discussed, really then trying to define what your strategy is for those areas and metrics that you could measure. Because once you're measuring things, you'll be accountable, and that will drive action, which is really what we want.
And the impact to bottom line, are you seeing that ESG is additive or reductive to the financial performance of the firm, or is this just another dimension to measure performance?
We feel that it definitely adds value to the business. So if you think about all of these aspects, again, it's creating a diverse perspective that leads to new thoughts and innovations and will really drive positive results to the company. So we are very bullish that this is an important aspect that companies need to address.
Yeah, so profitability becomes one dimension in terms of your measurement of success.
Yeah, I'd say, Peter, the other benefit that we're seeing is really employee engagement. So there are many employee groups that are very focused on ESG factors and want their companies to do good in society. And so that drives a much more positive culture, again, drives innovation and engagement from an employee perspective, which should generate positive results.
So with families that are starting to move down the ESG path, they've created some measurements, they've engaged their employees, their stakeholder group is aligned around all of these practices and is really looking for those measures of success. But a family company probably has not been open to sharing a lot or bragging even about who they are and what they do in the community. How do you go about maybe starting to showcase, in an appropriate way, what ESG practices and measures that you've put in place?
Yeah, it's a great question because there's certainly a lot of positive contributions that a family business is making to the community and to its employees or shareholders. But there's also probably some topics that they need to work on. So, for example, if they're looking at their human capital practices, they may not be happy with their diversity and inclusion ratios for their employees. And so you need to begin this process of transparently disclosing where you are. So most of our companies are looking at each of these metrics, understanding where they currently are, and then reporting those to either the employees or their stakeholders, and then making sure they're having an action plan to continue to improve those areas if they need to. And so this could be in the result of a story that they put together, and it could be published on their website. It could be sent to employees. It could be shared with the board. So really explaining their focus on these ESG factors.
Yeah, I would summarize it as authentic transparency that's backed by action, right? No matter where you're at on the measure, if you are disclosing it and talking about what you're doing to the appropriate stakeholder group or even the public at large, it becomes okay. It shows that you're acknowledging that the practice is improving.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think from a PwC perspective, we issued our first transparency report this year on human capital. And so that shared our numbers and our action plan to continue to improve that. But our clients really appreciated the transparency that we gave to them on these particular issues. And we're happy that we were working toward improving those.
Yeah. So with family companies, I think back to where we started is that they've probably been doing this to some degree or another. Time to measure it, get your stakeholders bought in as to what the measures are, and then slowly but surely start to improve those practices and share the results with all of your stakeholder group because you'll have deeper alignment across all of those stakeholders.
Yeah, and I would continue to focus on the employees because those employees that are working for family businesses will be very proud of the results, and that will continue to inspire them and generate new innovations that will carry on in the family business.
Fantastic. Well, Kevin, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.